I've been looking for the perfect sketchbook for a while, and I just can't find what I want, because what I really want is one made of Arches paper, 300 grams cold press watercolour paper, and it just doesn't seem to be available. So I thought what I would do is make my own. So I went along to the art store, and instead of buying it on a block, I bought a massive great big sheet, which has got this really lovely deckled edge and Arches stamped there in the corner. I was going to make the whole thing out of Arches paper, but then I saw some other Fabriano paper beneath, so I thought I could also try that one. That is 300 grams 100% cotton paper as well. And then I thought, just to try out something that I haven't tried before, and I probably wouldn't buy anyway, I bought a sheet of Fabriano 50% cotton paper, which is much whiter than the other two. So I'm going to cut those up and make them the right size for my book. This is a bit awkward to film because I haven't got the overhead camera today, because my paper is so big it wouldn't fit on. So I've got this funny angle, but let me just measure the paper. It's 56 wide and 76 long, and that's the same for the Arches and the Fabriano, but the one beneath the 50% cotton paper is smaller, so let me just measure that one. So the first thing I have to deal with is figuring out the grain of the paper. Now, all paper likes to bend in one way rather than another. If it's very fine paper, you probably won't notice it that much, but if it's thicker paper, you most certainly will. This is totally awkward because I'm trying to hold the microphone with one hand, film with the other hand, and then fold the paper with a third hand, which I don't have. So something's going to have to give. I will put down the camera. So I'm just folding the paper here. This is in the lengthwise direction, and it's quite nice to fold. It bends, it's not giving that much resistance. Whereas if I fold it widthways, I don't know whether you can tell, but there's much more resistance. It's not folding down so much. I can definitely feel it, even if it's not so easy to see on the screen. But just, yeah, if you get a big piece of paper, just give that a shot, give it a try, because it's really quite easy to figure out which way. And that just means that all the grains or the fibers of the paper are lining up in one direction, and that's the direction. So if they're lining up this way, they like to fold in that direction. So I'm going to now put the camera down, put the microphone down, cut up the paper into the right sizes. I'm going to go for the biggest size that I can get, but this smaller piece of paper will have to adapt to the size of the other ones. So I'm going to fold these big ones in half and then in half again. So it'll be a fairly small sketchbook, but good enough to take around with me. So I'll be back when I've cut up the paper. The tools that I'm going to be using today are a ruler, a bone folder, some waxed thread, an awl to make the holes, and a needle. I'm slicing it open with the bone folder because I don't want to have any sharp edges that I would get if I were to use scissors. So we're going primitive. Now that I have my two pieces of paper cut up, I feel like that's going to be enough. I don't feel like I need the third piece of paper, which was the whiter one and 50% cotton. So I'm going to leave that one out and just go with the Arches, which is on the left. It's slightly whiter, and the Fabriano, which is on the right, and it's slightly more yellow. So out of each of these pieces of paper, I got a total of 8 signatures. A signature is just one of these pieces of paper folded over. So that gives me 4 sides to paint on. So that will give me 24 sides of Arches and 24 sides of Fabriano, for a total of 48 sides. I feel like that's definitely going to be enough. Also, in terms of the height of the book, I'm probably going to double up these signatures, so I'll make it 4 of each. So that's a total of 4 Arches signatures and 4 Fabriano signatures, making a nice thick chunky book. So I think that's going to be great. I'm going to do a Coptic binding for this book because that's the kind of binding that will allow the book to lay flat, because I find it incredibly frustrating when you have a sketchbook and you can't quite open it, and so it's just awkward. So this is the kind of binding that will allow me to lay this book flat. Another decision I have to make is, am I going to have a cover? The only piece of cardboard suitable for a cover that I have around the house is the back of a sketch pad. So I'm going to go and grab that and decide whether or not I'm going to cut it up and use it as a cover or go coverless. So here's the piece of cardboard. It's not in the best state after I ripped off the front cover. But I think I might use it anyway, and I'll make some kind of repair job on that corner at some point. So I'm just going to cut that in half and start making the holes. Okay, so here's the book all ready to go. All I have to do now is load up my needle with my thread and then get sewing. So now it's time to sew the book up. I'm starting off with my thread in the inside of the first signature, bringing it to the outside. From there, I'll loop it under the back cover and bring it into the first hole and back to the front, keeping it on the left side of the initial stitch as you look at the screen. Then I need to loop it around the stitch, and once I've done that, I can go back in through the first hole and out of the second. I found it pretty difficult while filming these first two rows to keep the book in shot, as I kept having to pick it up to get the needle in the back cover, so I have to apologise as it's not as easy to follow as it should be. So it's come out of more of a sew this up with me sketchbook kind of adventure rather than an actual tutorial. So I'm just going to continue across the row, sewing each stitch in the same manner. Out of the hole, loop around the cover and up through the hole, bring the needle out to the left side of the stitch as we look at the screen, loop around the thread, pull it tight, and then go back into the same hole and repeat. When I get to the end of the row, I do the same thing, but instead of going back into the same hole the needle came out of, I move up a row and go into the first hole on the new signature, and then move along, repeating all the steps. The first 4 signatures are the Fabriano paper, as I started sewing from the back of the book towards the front. Once I had a few signatures on, it became easier, so towards the end the book mostly stays in the shot, but these first 2 or 3 rows were really quite chaotic to film. Now we've reached the front cover, and basically I repeat the same steps as for the back cover, but it's a bit easier to see this time, I hope. And we're done. Okay, now I just need to secure off the thread. So I'm going to do that by going around, making some knots. And then I'll just weave my way down here. And make a final knot at this end, just for fun. Okay, so there is the book, finished, complete. Let's see if it does lie flat. That's one side, that's the end, the other side, the binding. So you've got that lovely chain stitch and half a chain stitch on these ends. I'm wondering if I actually did something wrong on the ends, because I feel like it should have the complete chain stitch, but I'll go and check that afterwards. But anyway, here comes the test. Does it lie flat? Does it open flat? This is the arches, so this is the... Yes, it does. It does indeed. So I'll be able to paint on all of those pages with no problem at all. This is an empty sketchbook tour, so I'll do another video when I filled this up. So there it is. I am super happy with that. Maybe I'm sure I'll get some paper and cover that up, but I'll do that later. But that is, I'm totally happy with that. That's a really massive size sketchbook. I've got 48 sides that I can paint on. It's a really nice landscape size. If I open it up, I can get a super long landscape. It's the exact paper that I want to paint on. And I can just, it's a sketchbook, so I don't have to be precious about it. I can learn, I can experiment, test stuff. I'm psyched about that. So, and it was also really cheap comparatively. If you were to buy a sketchbook of this kind of paper, I'm not sure how much it would cost, but this one cost me 14 euros. Both sheets of paper cost 7. So for a total of 14 euros, and the card I already had from a previous sketch pad. The thread and the needles I already had as well. So that sketchbook cost me a total of 14 euros, which I think is a great bargain. So it's definitely something to consider if you are struggling to find a sketchbook that you like, or on the paper that you like, or at a price you like. So why not just make your own? I'll be back in however long it takes me to fill this with a sketchbook tour, and we'll see what I did. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too chaotic. So I'm looking forward to using it. I'm going to sign off now. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. And please like and subscribe for more adventures and stuff. Okay, thanks. Bye.